Hi everyone, and welcome to Nebula 75, a day of puppets. Now, this day is the last in a series of events run by the program Arts in Isolation at the University of Hull. It may seem a little bit mad to run a series of events during a pandemic year. However, the aim of this program was to showcase, essentially, what we can create in the isolation of our own homes. So how does art and creativity take place when we're all kind of locked down, when we don't necessarily have the option to be able to kind of use the resources as creators that we normally use? So today is all about Supermarionation. So Supermarionation is a very specific and unique art form, a very specific and unique way of filming that was kind of created and pioneered by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson in the 1960s on programs such as Thunderbirds, Stingray, and Joe 90. The team that we're going to hear from today, from Century 21 Productions, this art form was basically extinct before they kind of recreated it again. So this team came together in 2014 to produce the documentary filmed in Supermarionation. And after that, they actually produced 3 original new episodes of Thunderbirds for Thunderbirds' 50th anniversary, maintaining the unique and authentic style of those original 1960s productions in pretty much every way. So kind of reviving that unique Supermarionation style. After lockdown started last March, the team were kind of at home in London in their flat and decided to make, using kind of what they had on hand, this show Nebula 75. So Nebula 75 is a brand new original show filmed in the Supermarionation style, but also filmed in super isolation, which is basically the kind of techniques and processes that the team used to make this work, this Supermarionation style, at home. So today we have a screening, first of all, where we will show episodes from Nebula 75 and a couple of making-ofs. And then from 2 o'clock, the Century 21 team, led by Stephen La Rivière, are going to restage scenes from Nebula 75 live on stage, recreating the situation of their living room as far as they possibly can and showing us exactly how this was made. So I would like to briefly invite Stephen La Rivière up to the stage to say a little bit about Nebula 75, what we're about to watch. Then we'll shoot into the screening, and afterwards there will be a Q&A with the team on stage.
Well, that was such a good introduction. I don't really quite know what I've got to add, but what I wanted to say is that what we want to do today is, this is sort of a weird mix of, we're professional filmmakers, but we're also making stuff in our flat. And that last year, when everything closed down, the real genesis of this was suddenly looking at professional television and looking how quickly it nosedived, and suddenly thinking, well, maybe it might be possible to make something within the controlled confines of our flat, which turned out very quickly to be a completely mad idea, because we live in a central London flat, and anyone who's ever been to a central London flat knows they tend to be a bit pokey. And there are also only 3 of us, my girlfriend and my flatmate, and we were trying to do really what 50 years ago a team did with an extraordinary amount of money and about 150 people, and we were trying to do it with just 3. But what I want to we want to bring to today is to sort of show that to make this work for 2 audiences, we have this sort of weird blend of professionally made puppets, and we have the skills to shoot it, but also one of the things we had to do was make so much at home and steal whatever was around us. And so hopefully make this accessible in the way that if you're an amateur filmmaker, what sort of things can you use for no money? We've called this technique low budget because we had no money, and so we're stealing whatever was around us, but also show you things that you can, professional things that you can bring to your low budget filmmaking to really get the best out of a limited circumstance. Just briefly to introduce Nebula 75, our original idea was just to do a sort of an extract of a Jerry and Sylvia Anderson style puppet show that you'd never seen before. A couple of years ago, we had a small slot. We made a fake puppet series for a television show called Endeavour, the ITV drama series. And it's only a minute long, and and it went down very, very well. So we thought, well, we'll do something using the same puppets, and we'll just invent this 10-minute little extract of a series. And it was very, very difficult to do, but it went out online, and we got an extraordinary number of views. I mean, I think we clocked up 500,000 within a couple of weeks across various different platforms, and people started sending us fan art and asking us if we'd make any more. And a year later, we've made 8, and we've just made our first television sale, which I certainly never expected. In fact, the first one was so difficult, I considered not releasing it. So I hope that there may be something in what we show today that just goes to show that even in these difficult times, the show must go on, but also hopefully not taking it too seriously, as you'll see from our first film, which is we decided that having made it, that while everyone else was trying to pretend that, or we felt that everyone else was trying to pretend that things were in normal times, we thought we might as well poke fun at the ludicrous way we were making it. I expected it to be like when Gerald Ratner's infamous moment, when he declared that everything that their jewelry was cheap crap. But actually, by being honest, we seem to have won ourselves an audience, and hopefully you will feel the same today. And I shall leave you to the screening now. You can let me know what you think afterwards, even if it's bad.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for coming along today, all of you. And thank you for showing us those amazing films. And also, I really loved the making of docs that were in the style of like a rank newsreel film from the 1950s. That was awesome. Yeah, I mean, I guess I have some kind of questions for you, but actually I want to say that this is being sort of streamed online. This is an online event, and actually we have a stream going with chats and comments online coming through. So if people have questions online, they can ask them in that chat. And we have our intern Lewis down here who can kind of hopefully shout out questions to me, comments to me. So thank you for that, Lewis. But I guess my first question is kind of an obvious one, which is, what gave you the idea to do this? Back in like lockdown, when lockdown began, Nebula 75, like what made you think let's make stuff?
I think it was pure madness, really. We did have a plan to make something ridiculously ambitious, which all came to I won't say crashing down, maybe a pause when lockdown happened. And I think really the genesis of it is that I can't remember what it was that we were watching on television, and we were sort of amazed at the speed at which professional standards have sort of dropped out the window. So we thought, well, maybe we could get away with making something in our flat. It's not like we've got anything else to do. And so we just decided to do it, and then realized very quickly that it was actually, even though we've done this several times, we've been making these sorts of films for years now. We know that they're very, very involved and but there's always that thing. It's like anyone who's ever experienced extreme pain, and then you don't have the pain anymore, and it sort of dies away. That's what making these sorts of films are like. You make them, they're miserable. Then you get to the end of it, and hopefully people say nice things. And then a few weeks pass by, and you think, oh, well, maybe we'll do it again. So that's the genesis of Nebula 75. Basically, we'd forgotten how painful it is to make it with a full crew. So we thought we'd do it with just 3 of us. At this point, Andrew at the end was separated from us. So Géraldine, Elliot, and I live together in a small flat in London. Drew and I write the scripts, and then Géraldine, Elliot, and I had to film it with some pre-existing items, a few things that some of our external crew sent us. But basically, we were in an isolation block, and basically, it really is our living room. So yeah, that's the genesis.
You're directing, Elliot's special effects, and
Elliot does everything.
Elliot does
everything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Elliot's doing puppeting. Art department, Géraldine, right? Yeah. And of course.
And then I'm on the end of the phone to be shouted at when things go wrong at a safe distance.
many a word said in jest. Yes, no, but I think the thing is we all, particularly when they're down to 3 of you, and you've got to, that the film that said that, the lighting director, the puppeteering, Elliot, does the puppeteering. Normally you would have a couple of people per puppet, but in the sense that there'd be one person controlling it from the controller at the top, which we'll show later in our demonstration. And then you'll have a lip sync operator, and then you maybe have someone to hold the puppet because they are, I think personally, they look very good on screen, but in real life, they can basically do nothing. They wave around, which, on a screen that size, the minute they start to do this, they always look drunk. So you have someone to lean across the set and hold them. Poor Elliot ends up doing for this almost all of those jobs, sometimes holding 2 puppets at the time. And he edits the show, and he does all the track laying, etc. And he does a lot of the special effects work as well. So Elliot is a one-man production unit available for Tara anytime when we don't need him.
It's an amazing feat, and actually, I guess what we kind of want to talk about today a lot is the difference between kind of Supermarionation, as in what you did for the Thunderbirds kind of anniversary episodes and your other work, and Superisolation, which is making the most of what's actually around you. So, I guess I have another question, and then I'll kind of ask, kind of go to online. But I just want to know, what's the maddest thing you've ever used to get a shot, or to kind of make a scene work, or to what's the weirdest prop that you've turned into something else? Does that make sense?
What was the underwear that?
Oh yes.
Well, I was going to talk about that during the costume portion of things, but basically, I don't know if you guys remember old Hollywood glamour shots where the woman looks particularly beautiful and glamorous. And to do that, basically, you can use flesh-colored tights that you stretch over the lens. Now, during my COVID madness, I threw out most of my tights. So I only had, didn't we all at one point do that? So basically what I did is I went through all of my underwear, and I found a bra and a pair of knickers that were basically mesh, lilac-y, flesh-colored mesh, not black like my tights were. So we ended up stretching my underwear over the camera. So that was fun. That was a good day.
If the audience had known that the conversation was turning to Elliot, sorry, not Elliot's underwear, Geraldine's underwear, I'm sure that
Did not use Elliot's underwear.
We wouldn't have been able to get out of the room.
It's been washed and I use it, but
That is pretty mad. So the puppets you had, did you have to kind of how did you remake those kind of puppets and marionettes that you had into the new characters, into Ray Neptune? Did you have to kind of get someone else to do that? Did you have to send off for people to kind of, what goes into making a puppet?
So we have a brilliant puppet sculptor called Stephen Mansfield, who does a lot of work with Madame Tussauds. He has taken a lot of these, and we did a previous project for ITV, for which we had Ray Neptune created. He started life in another series, and we brought him back for this. But that was a Stephen Mansfield creation, and Athena came from him as well.
No, Athena came from Mary.
Oh, sorry, yes, of course, Mary Turner, who was an original Thunderbirds sculptor, and she worked on all of the Supermarionation series as well. But yeah, that was...
There's the plasticine as well that we occasionally do.
Yeah, so we had a stock of a lot of our stuff is to do with Thunderbirds originally, and then we've done other projects for which we've had to create original characters for which we retain the copyright in. But one of our problems at the very start of it is that we only had a limited number of characters that we could use, because we only expected to make one 10-minuter. Now we've made 8, and so one of our big problems is trying to come up with enough characters without having, access to the facilities to make these puppets. The puppets, the faces are made in fiberglass. They're very fiddly to make. They're they're very simple mechanically, which is why they always go wrong. Sometimes the simpler something is, the more of a pig it is to work with. And even if we could do that in our flat, you wouldn't want to, because the smell of the, the paints and the fiberglass, etc. I mean, we did paint a puppet once, and I'm amazed we're still here to tell the tale. I mean, you don't have proper ventilation systems, so it's partly, but also this thing is that, like many people, lockdown, we suddenly found ourselves without jobs. The whole point was to make a show that actually really didn't cost us any money, so that we could make, and that, the other crew members, if they wanted to, could volunteer to do stuff. So one of our great challenges is to keep coming up with a number of characters to make without having to go through the process of making them all. So some of the characters that have appeared in the series, we started to build new plasticine faces on top of Thunderbirds characters. We won't say which ones, but because they were working props already, because they've got all sorts of mechanisms inside, and the eyes are made like real human false eyes. So they're terribly intricate. So a few of our characters have had previous lives, but are now working unpaid and in disguise.
And I think as well, the fact that we had to use pre-existing puppets dictated what the series could be. So we had this hero character. So, okay, he'll be our new hero. We had a rather portly gentleman who'd previously been in a Thunderbirds episode. Okay, what about if he's the doctor and he's in charge of fitness? So then there's a doctor on the ship. We happen to have a robot, so include a robot. So Nebula 75, it's kind of been created by its circumstance as well.
Mm-hmm. I could also point out from that point of view that Athena doesn't have a lip-sync mechanism, as in she can't talk. So we've made her into a creature, an alien basically, that talks through your thoughts.
Oh, wow.
And we just made that happen because, well, we liked her. She's a beautiful sculpt. We wanted to use her, but we couldn't actually make the mouth work. So
that's amazing. So you have this character that has a kind of unique aspect to them. That's just because you're working within those constraints.
Exactly.
Right?
It does add to the mysticism of her. Ultimately, it works in the whole alien thing. So it actually worked out quite well.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah, everything in the scripts is built around what we can possibly do. What characters do we have available? Sometimes we can get, as I said, an extra character made, but there are practical limitations. If there are 3 of us, how many puppets can you hold at one time? So we try and break it, as we would do really on a normal shoot, we try and break it down into, that these are the shots that we can achieve relatively easily, and then these are the shots which we'll kill ourselves to do. We always try and get, the idea is to try and build an idea that it's not, I mean, even from episode 1, we never wanted it to look, I mean, there are certain things that give away, I think, to an extent, the circumstances in which it was made. The original 1960s productions were terribly glossy and they were terribly expensive. And we've got, about half the size of the stage, if that, to work in. But we're always trying to do stuff to hide, to build the idea that there's a world outside of that spaceship. I mean, the reason it's set in space is purely because it meant that, that we had one background to put in outside. They can't go outside, so it means that you can just move them from spaceship to spaceship, so you can always keep them inside. Everything about the show is dictated. Even the order sometimes the characters appeared in was the order in which we could get them working, because they need lots of maintenance.
So the characters are in isolation too. In a space, and they're kind of working within a space.
Yeah, so we try to work in lots of sort of lockdowny sort of things about the idea of losing time, doing the same thing day after day, which I think is one of the reasons that it seems to have weirdly found much more of an appeal than we were expecting. Is that it really is a lockdown series. The characters are in their own lockdown. And I wanted to try and, because I know that many people in lockdown were at home, and other people, like us, were, like trapped in a flat. And I know that sometimes when you don't have that freedom, there's that, we wanted to be, is it lonelier to be by yourself or to be trapped with other people, and always the same other people, and you can never get away from them? So I see Commander Neptune for, maybe not for the audience here today, but for anyone older online, I see it as a bit like Round the Horn, that you have this sort of central straight character who's surrounded by all these loons.
I'm sorry.
Oh, put your foot in it there, Stephen. Sorry, were you?
No, that was it. That's the leg. Sorry, there was no more depth to the series than that. I'm terribly sorry.
Do we have some online questions? Yeah, Lewis.
How long did the first episode take to produce? And how does that compare
So I'll repeat that for the online. How long did the first episode take you to produce, and how does that compare to? Sorry, what was it?
How does that compare to your most recent episode?
Yes. How does that compare to your most recent episode?
Well, I think I'm right in my recollection of this, but I think the first episode took about 48 years and 3 weeks. The first episode is terribly simple. It's only 10 minutes, and the last one, which is the one that was just streamed, episode 8, is 35 minutes. And that first episode took about 4 days to do, and that's largely pretty much one character sitting on a box. But I mean, they sit very badly and things like that, so he kept falling off. And we stupidly gave him a microphone, which kept dropping. And the thing is that he's like spinning plates. You get onto the set, and everybody has their job to do. And so if something goes wrong, a wire breaks, or the puppet stops talking, or in this case, this bloody microphone keeps dropping to the floor, it gets, and the more delay, and the more you've got everyone sort of set up, and the puppets are quite heavy, less good humored it becomes on set, and then it sort of takes a bit more time. So it was about 4 days to produce 10 minutes for the first one, and then the last one, we recorded the voice tracks. I can't remember which date, but then we mixed the final episode 3 weeks later. So it took 3 weeks from beginning to end to make the last one. I think that's about right.
Sounds about right, yeah. And with that first one as well, because it was starting from scratch, we didn't have, for example, a lighting kit appropriate to be used in a flat. So we had to get lights in, and we found out they weren't very good. So then you had battling with the puppets and lights that aren't quite what you want. So it's a kind of development on the fly with that first episode as well. Same thing with like the opening titles, things like that. All of these things introduced as it goes along.
Yeah, and we would think of people in an odd sort of way that the more ambitious we become, the more difficult it becomes. And that's actually not, I mean, the first episode was terribly complicated because basically we weren't equipped and we're fools. And also you do put, it's not that we put a lot of effort into that first one, more than we did into subsequent ones, but it becomes easier because once something, starts to take on a life of its, I mean, you're doing the first one and you say to friends or your other crew, go, yeah, we're going to make this, we'll make this thing in our flat. And they're all thinking, well, I haven't got a job anymore. You're going to pay me for this? What's this? And then suddenly it becomes successful, and you suddenly find people start sending you. So our sound mixer suddenly said, "Oh, you can borrow some lights." So that suddenly made it much easier that we weren't having to try and prop things up and then we could start to get things through the post and through eBay. So it's just more that we could get more resources together.
Yeah, I think that first episode, people forget how much lockdown really was lockdown in those early days. Does it not being able to rely on even, the Royal Mail turning up with something dependably?
Well, that is true. The model of the Nebula 75, which was built by our model maker in Preston. And again, so even when people were sending stuff into, they're working with stuff that they've got around them. But he managed to get that into the post, and it vanished, I think, for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Which is why that gag in there about the postman in the making of film kicking the box through the door because the model just vanished. And so actually that first episode did take a couple of weeks, but largely because the Royal Mail are a service this country can be proud of.
You'll see in a moment when we bring the sets on how we've updated that. But previously, it was just we were applying vinyl straight to the back of bookcases. So whenever we wanted to change the set, we'd have to take it down, reapply it. And laying vinyl is not the easiest of tasks. It keeps bubbling, so we have to keep doing that. But that took a lot longer at first. And now we have an easier method of just putting it onto a thin sheet of wood that we can Velcro to the back of the bookcases. So you'll see that shortly. But I think the only thing that sort of takes longer now is the post-production of each episode with the running time extending. But otherwise, yeah, it's surprising how
the shooting gets easier, and we keep making Elliot's job harder and harder by loading more special effects and more complex editing and 4K.
But in terms of shooting days, that probably was 4 or 5 days for the last episode, I think. Yeah, probably.
Wow, it snowballs, doesn't it? Like it seems to have snowballed. It's become a bigger thing. But in terms of kind of how you shot this, like you've got these puppets which are very complex, things, and then I noticed on the spaceship in the last episode we watched, we have kind of backgrounds with buttons. The buttons were like little Nespresso pods, weren't they? it's kind of amazing, like what you've used
I mean,
around you.
With the Nespresso pods, it was literally just because for that very first episode, Stephen was like, okay, we've got some vinyl. We need anything that we can glue on the vinyl that doesn't look exactly like what it is. And the Nespresso pods aren't real Nespresso pods. None of this is sponsored. So they're these. So there's just these random black pods, but it does mean basically that every so often, as you noticed when we tried to take everything out of the car, the Nespresso pods, I should stop calling them coffee pods.
The random pods.
The random pods break, and you just get coffee everywhere, which is great when, again, as Stephen was saying, Elliot is set up, he's holding a puppet, they're incredibly heavy, and we're ready to go, and the pod breaks, and you just get coffee all over the stage, which is brilliant. It's good stuff.
And a lot of the rest of it is cooker dials. I mean, in our case, we happen to have, because we're weirdos, a collection of 60s. I mean, actually, we have a fairly vast collection of original 60s stuff that we've had from other productions. But even then, we were isolated. I mean, the irony is, of course, we were not under-resourced. If we'd been allowed to leave our flat and could have traveled to our storage unit, we would have had everything. We wouldn't have had any more space, but we would have had what we were. So it was slightly a thing of going, oh, we do own all this stuff. We just can't get to it and use it. But a lot of the detailing are things like cooker dials and bits of model kits that are pressed out and used for basically anything. If it looks
A few
like
Lego pieces as well, I think, right?
Oh yeah, there's Lego
60s
in there.
Lego pieces.
But we try and use stuff, even with something like this, we try and use stuff that looks like it's, the whole conceit is that it feasibly looks like it could have been done in the 1960s.
They did a lot of that in the 60s as well. There was a lot of kit bashing. I'm sure anyone who's seen Thunderbirds will know about the lemon squeezer in Thunderbird 1's silo on the wall. So there was a lot of that happening back then as well,
Yeah.
which we tried to replicate.
And they had a fortune to work with, so you know.
You had 75p. I'm sure that was an exaggeration though, right?
It's a huge exaggeration. It was
Yes.
nowhere near 75p.
5.
Thank you. So Lewis, do we have any other questions to read out?
How did your careers end you up to this point? And if all of you have always been really interested in Supermarionation and Superisolation, and if so, what maybe some of your favorite Supermarionation series are, excluding Nebula 75, of course.
Careers is a very generous word. Thank you
I'll
very
need to
much.
read that out, I think. How did you come to this point in your careers, and have you always been interested in Supermarionation, and what's your favorite?
Well, shall we just work this down very quickly? I've always loved the Supermarionation shows, and I've always, as a kid, I never quite understood why they didn't. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that they weren't contemporary because they're so well made and they were so ahead of their time. I just remember they were repeating when I was a kid, Doctor Who, which I always loved too, and I don't want to knock it, but they were made. The first episode of Stingray and the first episode of Doctor Who were, made pretty much in the same month. And one looks practically Victorian and the other one looks so modern. So I didn't actually realize when I was a very young kid that they weren't new shows. They didn't seem to be particularly out of context of the surroundings. But so I always wondered when I found out they weren't being newly made, why people weren't doing that. So in that sense, it's been a long-term ambition of mine to bring it back, but I never actually expected it to happen. And my favorite Thunderbirds, I would say, and Stingray. Thunderbird, Stingray, Captain Scarlet.
Likewise, again, Thunderbirds was something my dad introduced me to. And again, I didn't know it was, he told me he'd grown up with it, but I thought it'd been a continuous thing. So it's been a lifelong passion of mine as well. And it's the reason I wanted to get into film and TV. So to work on this, not quite sure how it's happened, but
well, you're doing it.
Yes.
You're literally doing the same. You're literally doing it. Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know if anyone else wants to come in on that.
My answer is going to be underwhelming. I grew up in a different country, and I really did not know about Thunderbirds or Supermarionation until I met Stephen and Drew. And I was living in Switzerland with Stephen at that point, and he said, listen, we're going to make Thunderbirds 1965. Do you want to be part of the crew? You can, work on the puppets and the costumes and the styling. And I was like, you know what, why not? So that's how I started. So it wasn't as Elliot and Stephen, but I have grown to appreciate the episodes, the stories, and the craft, because there's a lot of work in them.
And you'd have to grow to appreciate it if you're surrounded by it all
Yes,
the time.
there's literally no choice, given given how much time I spent on it.
I should point out as well that Géraldine, who'd never seen any of this stuff before working on it, now walks around the flat singing the UFO theme tune to herself. I don't know how that happened. I watched them as a kid as well. My favorite was Stingray. and it left my life for a while until I got back involved with Stephen again and just re-immersed myself in all of this stuff. I appreciated it as a kid, but it wasn't till coming to it at this kind of level that I really appreciated the technical artistry of it, I suppose. As a kid, you're wrapped up in the stories rather than just the sheer scale of it all.
Yeah, and I mean, you've all since. I mean, you basically made Thunderbirds, the 1965 episodes, 3 of those episodes, which were sort of recreated. Using the authentic Supermarionation style based on like audio adventures, right? So kind of adapting them. Didn't you do that in the very same place where they were originally, like Thunderbirds was kind of shot? Was that, I seem to remember, like it was in Slough, wasn't it?
It was on it's in the exact same road and the same set of buildings. I mean, the building we were in possibly wasn't used for Thunderbirds, and if it was used, it was in a very minor sort of way. But we were on the same road in the same complex of buildings. And
that must have been pretty amazing. Well, I guess you get used to it though, right?
They were freezing. I mean, it was all terribly romantic, really.
Yeah, the glamour had all gone in the 60s, really, when they moved out.
Yeah, it's this sort of, we're going back to the spiritual home. But I don't know. Once you've got to the point, you just every day you're just thinking, oh God, I'm so cold. Suddenly the glamorous Slough sort of wears off very quickly, really.
Thanks. So Lewis, any other questions? I was going to ask that too, but yeah, who are your favorite characters from Nebula 75?
I think
who did Circuit?
I would say Circuit, actually. Circuit started off as this sort of utilitarian robot, but very quickly became our outlet for expressing any of our frustrations with each other, with people commenting online. So Circuit can directly say the things that we would really like to say to people, and has become probably the most characterful character of them all. So yeah, I'd go with Circuit.
Circuit is pretty amazing. Geraldine?
I mean, annoyingly enough, I'd also say Circuit. And I think part of his charm is the fact that he doesn't have an expression directly pasted onto his face. So we, as Drew said, basically imbued him with our personalities and our thoughts. So he's sort of become this, I don't know, I love him every time he's on the screen. I'm very happy. I also love Dr. Asteroid. Just because he's happy, but a bit of a bumbling idiot, but at the same time also very intelligent. So again, he's in fantastic costume. I think he's great.
Yeah. I love the idea that this character Circuit is like maybe a way to exercise. The dialogue kind of exercises your frustrations. That's amazing. Thank you, Elliot.
I think we all have a fondness for the sort of comedic characters. I really like Rusty from episode 3 that you've just seen, Short Circuit. Yeah, I think him, the monteurs from episodes 5 and 7. The funny ones are just very good to quote. They're also a good way of getting sort of frustrations out. But Rusty, I think, has just got a sort of sweetness to him, and he's a bit.
You still laugh at Rusty. I mean, because of course Elliot's seen a lot of the footage a lot of times because of the editing. There's specifically whenever Rusty clears his throat, I don't know why, but it sends Elliot in stitches. So he'll be laughing away as he's trying to edit, which is counterproductive.
And it's good to have the voice living with us as well, because Stephen does the voice of Rusty. So no, so we can get him to say anything we like.
Well, that is true. There's one benefit. So one of the things is, of course, we with no money, so you sort of cast from around you. So either the voices, Geraldine's Athena, and I'm Rusty, and Dr. Asteroid, and Lieutenant Mercury, and various other characters, and then Commander Neptune and Lieutenant Solstice are recorded by my husband and wife team of filmmakers, Justin and Lindsay Lee, who worked with us for years, or we all work together. They're our Canadian branch. But one of the great things is that when you have control and you're not getting actors into, you can make the characters say the most foul things and record all your own sketches that may never see the light of day. I don't know that I've got a favorite. I know it's a very lame answer. I am rather fond of Commander Neptune, mainly because I've possibly relate to him in some way. And also, I think it's I'm not saying it's easy to do. Well, with these puppets, it's very easy to do comedy, but I think that Commander Neptune actually, he does the other side that I think that the Supermarionation puppets do very well. They can do extreme comedy, but they can also do straight heroism. There's something very Hollywood about, you know, think of the Tracy brothers, or even Lady Penelope. Like Lady Penelope and Parker, the perfect example of that. That Penelope is very beautiful and very sort of, you know, stately, and Parker is overtly the comedy character, and they are complete extremes, and yet they work very well together within one. So I think actually getting the straight characters to work is requires a bit more. I mean, Justin once said to me, you know, he really has to sort of find the, you know, the character. He said, you know, do you do that? Do you have to do that with Dr. Asteroid? And I just said, no, you know, it's just there because it's a big comedy voice, you know. It's I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I shouldn't be making this admission on stage. But no, I've got a fondness for them all, really. Oh, and Circuit is a complete bitch, so I relate to that.
I don't know if the first time round I clocked that you were rusty, but that just is maybe me. I don't know, but is pretty good.
Well, pretty good is what we aim for.
Very, very good. Sorry, what time is it? We don't have a watch.
I have no idea.
Right. So I think we probably have time for a couple more questions. So Lewis, is there any other questions from the stream that you would like to read out?
Can we look forward to more episodes of Nebula 75? And if so, will they be broadcast on YouTube and elsewhere?
So yeah, can we look forward to more episodes of Nebula 75, and where will they be broadcast?
Nebula 75 is one of those shows, like everything else we've ever made, that when we get to the end of one, we always say never again. And then a few weeks later, we change our mind. There will be more Nebula 75, and we'll bring you more news when we're able to.
Very canny answer there.
Never commit to anything.
Was there any other questions?
Yes, there are some users who are talking about the little mini commercials that we created for
Uh-huh.
75 and talk about how they came about and if we should possibly seek sponsorship for them.
Okay, yeah. How did the mini commercials come about, and are you gonna seek sponsorship for them, or?
One of our viewers, and the names escape me now, send us a fake cereal box front at some point that triggered an idea in us. We'd already thought about what is the life of this show outside of the episodes, and that's how the Solar Smacks adverts came about. And they're all really modeled over what was being done in the 60s when they had sponsorship with Kellogg's and things like that. So it's this sort of hyper quick, hyper energetic version of Nebula 75 in these 30-second chunks for this horrible looking cereal, as it turned out. Because what was it in the end that you actually used for the human scale?
I can't remember. I found the cereal and everyone seems
It
to
looks
think
like
it's
cat
disgusting.
food, but it's not. So cardboardy kind of cereal, yeah.
But then again, I mean, it was actually born out of the fake commercials. So it was Adrian Bird who sent a sort of mock-up of the cereal. We got lots of art in from various people, but actually the real practical reason that we did it is because we did the first episode. Then a week later, we put out the second episode. When we put the first episode out, we had no plans to put out a second episode. You know, that's the speed at which we did the first 5 episodes within about 6 weeks, you know, between 3, and that's written and produced. And there really was, and I think people think we're being dishonest when we say we didn't actually plan to do anything more than the first one. But that really is the truth. And when the second episode went out, we had our first inquiry from a broadcaster about it. And so we wanted to, and we were getting so much sort of, and it's not like we had much else to do. You know, why not be more miserable? So actually the Solar Smacks commercials were a way that we could make something and largely take a week off. That we could keep, keep the series, we could keep something going. So we did episode 1, 2, 3, then we did a couple of Solar Smacks commercials, which gave us a couple of weeks to do episode 4 and then episode 5. And then after that, we just burnt out.
And the other fun thing about the Solar Smacks is that in the fake advert, there are fake badges that you collect with the cereal. And as soon as we put those online, people started writing in asking, well, when can we have the badges, please? So that became the start of merchandising in real life for Nebula 75 as well.
Yes, and our model here, Elliot, is he's currently modeling one of the badges. But it's very funny. I mean, this is just within weeks of this idea that we just had, that people asking us for the Nebula 75 badges. And we're like, okay, well, we'll do it. You know, which is, I mean, the only reason I say it like that is because, of course, it's an investment of money. And, you know, it's not called low budget for nothing. But the badges and all of our merchandise has done, I mean, really spectacularly well, you know, within the, you know, the realms of which we're, I mean, it's helped, it's up until this point, you know, it's not been a funded series, but, you know, the audience have kept it going, you know, through allowing us to buy the things that we can't, you know, that we really do. There are some things that, you know, that really only money, or maybe other things can buy, but we weren't offering those services. So yeah, no, the merchandise, the fans have really helped create it. Our audience, you know, has helped create it. They've helped driven it. We could respond because we're making it up as we go along. Circuit, you know, seemed to be very popular. So we could write Circuit, and then because people kept writing to us about the fact that we know that 33 million miles isn't even the distance to the moon. Of course we know that. And these people send you in, and sometimes you get really condescending. I mean, the majority of the correspondence we have is really, really lovely.
But they're not the ones you remember.
Yes, you always remember the bad ones. And so it just became Circuit, just became a way. And then Circuit would do these little introductions in which each week he would just tell them, you know, that, you know, yes, of course we know. I mean, I think my favorite one is 33 million miles is the minimum distance you have to go to miss the point.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. I had a selfish question, which I really want to know. Did you do the costumes, Geraldine?
Well, very much like with the puppets, the costumes were a mix of what we could do and what we already had. So a lot of our costumes are made by our previous costumier, a lovely lady called Liz, who makes these very intricate, beautiful pieces, one of which is the asteroid one, which is just so well made, it hurts me. Like there's several layers anyway. And I did start making costumes basically because I had a lot of, as you have heard multiple times now, a lot of spare time and some scissors, and it was that would give myself a mullet. So I started sort of looking around the flat, trying to think, okay, what can I cut holes in? So I might show it briefly afterwards while we're doing our little demonstration. But, you know, for example, I found a very sort of, you know, a throw basically, which became a whole bunch of things, including Santa trimming. But more importantly, I started going through my wardrobe and with my tights, binning a lot of stuff. So gosh, what's the most useful item of clothing? It's socks. Socks is the best thing to make puppet costumes out of because they're relatively stretchy. They've got relatively small prints on them. You can't use big prints with puppets. If I use these sorts of stripes, the puppets would look tiny, and that's not what you want to do. So that's the best thing. You could basically use, you know, 2 socks and make a really nice jumper. is the main thing, I'd say.
The idea of puppet jumpers made with socks is...
They look really comfortable
really
too, that's
cool,
the thing.
Actually.
They look really comfortable. Well, the whole outfit that Dave wears in that episode, the last episode you guys saw, is a sock jumper. Incredibly comfortable, so easy to put on him too.
Did you have a sewing machine? Did you?
Nope. I just stabbed myself a lot.
No, I should say that, and just in case our regular costume maker just described our previous costume maker, Liz, is watching, that we still love you, Liz, and we still love you to come back. And
no, please make more costumes for us, Liz.
But Liz had a slight, and apart from the fact that Liz lives in Switzerland, the problem getting things, she also had a bit of an accident with, which she nearly cut off her finger. And so Geraldine heroically took over with just and hand stitched everything herself. So
which is why you can't pull on the costumes too hard, because my stitching isn't that great. But you know what? It still looks okay on screen.
Just one quick thing about the costumes. I did see a question online. Someone was asking why are the characters? Why is there one actual astronaut and the rest are amateurs? And that's very easy. We didn't have any other costumes. We had two costumes, and at the time, without really, it just. I mean, we couldn't adapt them. The costume was never going to fit Dr. Asteroid, who is a massive puppet. It was the seemed like the sort of easy escape route from the fact that only one of them's got a costume. Sorry, I've actually got no. They've all got costumes. They look ridiculous. They don't have costumes. Only one of them has got a space uniform.
And also, it's just a bit more fun when they're not all in uniform. There's a bit more of a family feeling, and I think that's one of the things we like about the Anderson show. Is with the International Rescue Organization, it's not the uniforms; it's the fact that they're a family unit. And even something like Stingray, they spend a lot of time just lounging around at home, and it's about those personal connections. So we were kind of forced into doing what we like as well.
There's an episode of Stingray in which the Marineville control tower is smashed into by a plane, so they move the main console and the equipment, and they run it out of their living room. So this isn't reference, other than the fact, when can we get this out of our living room? It's not referenced as being anything odd, and it's supposed to be a serious military organization. So Nebula 75 is born out of the same, basically, if you haven't understood this yet, it's not real life.
But also I'd say that, and this again was not done on purpose, but had they all been wearing the same costume, that would have just looked a bit samey, I think. There's more variety, and it does add to their personality. So it just works. It gets built into the story as well. It's like, this is who you are, because you show yourself through your clothes. So
I am mindful that we want to have enough time, because we're actually using this stage. Well, I'm not, but these guys are using this stage to set up for our event at 2, in which you're actually going to restage the circumstances of your flat, like your living room, and show how all this stuff was kind of done. Well, it'd be kind of partly, we'll kind of film that, and maybe kind of you could talk us through it. So that starts off at 2, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm mindful that I wanted to draw it to a close, but maybe just one more question if we have more questions online, Lewis, if there is anything else. Was it filmed on 35mm, or was it digitally filtered for the retro look?
We have used we've used quite a lot of film in the past, actually, but no, in this instance, it is filmed digitally and then processed afterwards, simply because we have no room, and also, I mean, also the film was also, we'd had to have got it processed, and that just wasn't going to happen last year. So no, we diverted from film for this.
Yeah, okay, if there was a couple more questions, then yeah, one more.
Are there any plans to do the same audio recordings of Stingray or Captain Scarlet?
Ooh, good one. Any plans to do the same with the audio recordings of Stingray? And I forgot what you said, and Captain Scarlet, yes.
What can I say? There are always so many conversations that you could say that anything is a plan. Are we going to do it as of right now? No. Have we ever had conversations about it? Yes. But I mean, we didn't know we were going to do the Thunderbirds episodes until about 6 weeks before.
Really?
I mean, no, genuinely.
Jesus.
No, it was the speed at which we had to move in and create everything, and we got the go ahead. The idea was pitched in May, and we were told we could go ahead. The Kickstarter that we used to rate went live on June the 9th, I think, and we had the money by July, and we moved into the studio on August the 28th, and we shot our first stuff on September the 2nd, and we showed the first episode October the 7th.
So like the Thunderbirds episodes, the 3 episodes that you kind of shot and made, they were crowdfunded, right? That's how you got the money. So again, we have the fans coming, like the importance of the fans and coming together and actually kind of, giving the money to kind of get this stuff made. But I gather that like that's it's kind of an interesting way to fund a series of films or TV shows, right?
Kickstarter. Yeah, interesting probably isn't the way that I describe it in my autobiography one day. I wouldn't.
I've heard you describe it otherwise.
Well, I think I have made it quite clear. It couldn't have happened without the fans and a lot of it. But there are a small minority always, and they make your life so unbearably unpleasant. So I mean, the thousands and thousands of people about. I mean, one of the backers put in a 5-figure sum, then came round to help pack the rewards, etc. Mm-hmm. But there seemed to be a correlation that the lower the amount put in, the nastier the correspondence that would come with it.
Like I put in a fiver, how dare you not say this line of dialogue?
Yeah, well, I just thought there was something. Well, no, we did. I mean, we showed the first episode and we got grading notes back from one of the backers. And I thought, so I mean, I did want to stress it was a very, very small minority, but they were a very loud minority who would turn up randomly at the studio,
Really?
would send you, emails and messages. And I mean, people put their names incorrectly into the into the backer thing where you could get and then they would and even if you showed them, you go, when it was your misspelling, I don't know your name. I couldn't say to a daytime audience anyway some of the stuff that we received. So
but mostly the fans were just lovely and everything was.
Oh yeah, no, when we had loads of fans come to the studio and they were all, and it was a genuinely wonderful. I mean, some of it was really quite moving. I mean, I've never seen so many grown men cry. That was before they saw the episodes, I should say. But I mean, the experience of seeing it recreated and to be able to stand in the sets and see. I mean, this isn't, I did want to stress that we're sort of riffing off. This isn't something that we have created. This is something that, that other people created, that we just think is so marvelous that we've wanted to sort of bring back into existence for, for a new audience.
I was lucky enough to visit that set when you were doing that, I think, and it was incredible. We actually are going to be, as a kind of treat, this isn't on the schedule online, but as a kind of treat, if you're tuned in right now, at 1 p.m, we're going to be showing the making of documentary of those Thunderbirds episodes, Thunderbirds 1965, 35-minute documentary. So that will kind of stream live for you at 1 p.m. And then at 2 p.m, we're going to be back doing the sort of restaging. We do actually have a skeleton audience where we are in Middleton Hall, and we have people filming it. And I noticed that one person's put up their hand. So would you like to come in just at the end? Okay, yeah. When you did Thunderbirds, were you able to use any of the original props from the original series, or was it all new stuff?
There's one original prop in there, and that's a piano that goes all the way back to their first Supermarionation series, Four Feather Falls. We did have an original Lady Penelope at the studio, but there are multiple reasons. First of all, a lot of the original puppets and props were all skipped at the end of the 60s. Those that survive are worth an absolute fortune. But there's actually a genuine practical reason for recreating, is that you have to slightly step away when you're working with them. They are, I'm afraid to say, they're tools, and they have to work, and they have to be like any crew member or actor. They need to turn up and they need to work. And if they fall off their wires, which they frequently do, and hit the concrete, you need to be able to go, well, never mind, not, oh, well, we're going to go bust now because that puppet was worth £50,000. I mean, they're fiberglass. You can kick them around I once shocked one of our audiences by taking the head and throwing it onto the floor. They're very, very, very robust.
Oh my God. I feel better about almost dropping one yesterday.
No. I mean, they are. They've got to be. I mean, fiberglass it's difficult to put we had a bit of set fall on one the other week. And, and it took a bit of the chip out, and we were able to rush it off to our brilliant puppet sculptor, Stephen Mansfield, for some touching up. But we weren't having to go, oh my God, we've just destroyed the Sistine Chapel of
those puppets are very valuable now as well, those original puppets and props and things, and convincing collectors to let you use them on set near explosions and water and all that kind of thing. It wouldn't happen, would it?
Apart from that, a lot of the internal mechanisms will also be original, and of course that will be part of the value, the original mechanism, and they don't necessarily work anymore. So it would feel sacrilegious almost to pull all the mechanisms out just to put our new pieces in so that we could use them. So it's just all around a bad idea.
Yeah.
As opposed to our puppets that work fantastically every fifth attempt.
Okay, I think I'm gonna draw it to a close, but we again, we have a kind of sort of skeleton audience, so no thunderous applause, but online everyone is in their kind of rooms and living rooms applauding this excellent Q&A. Thank you so much.
Elliot, sorry, just very quickly, Elliot's just reminded me of one thing I'd forgotten about, is that Ray Neptune is looking at you with a pair of Lady Penelope's eyes. Those do go back to the 60s, apparently. So
Really?
if
Like
you
the-
feel, particularly moved by Ray and you weren't otherwise inclined, to, then that's because it's really late looking into your soul.
The original eyes or the one from the puppets that you like?
So they're eyes that were made for the film Thunderbirds 6. They're light blue coloured.
Wow.
Because there was a bit of a mad panic, somehow they ended up in the Ray Neptune puppets. So
That's
they
very
do go
cool.
back to the 60s.
That is very cool.
I don't know whether they're screen used, probably not, but they're definitely the right vintage.
That's a great fact. All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to take a break now. We'll have something for you at 1 p.m, the documentary, and then we'll be back at 2. So please tune in at 2 to see this all kind of being restaged. And I am going to kind of give you a round of applause, and I hope everybody in the audience will join me. Thank you so much.